I'm a fucking idiot, dog. My mic was off. Oh my god. All right, we gonna have to backtrack this whole shit. So, Paul Pierce was saying that he feels responsible for taking LeBron to the next level. And I appreciate you for that, Elijah. I appreciate that, dog. That's super helpful. And Paul Pierce was specifically talking about Game 6 of the 2012 Eastern Conference Finals. I was talking for probably a good 5 minutes right there. It's 5-6 minutes. Yeah, this happened to me one other time before, and my girl's sister got on the live, and she was like, "You're not talking." I said, "What?" Oh man. Listen, hey, in my defense, I haven't slept. I haven't really slept much. We was at the airport. Grabbed my brother from the airport this morning. I'm on a bender right now. The other time I'm talking about what my girl sister had to tell me, I was talking for I think a good 40 minutes to myself. But anyway, what y'all think of this, man? Paul Pierce feels like he's responsible for LeBron James's greatness, and I feel like a lot of the people that are saying, "Oh, Paul Pierce is trash, LeBron better than you," da 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 da. I feel like y'all were born after 2008 and just don't know Paul Pierce. I think that's really what this comes down to. You just don't know Paul Pierce. And so, if you don't know who Paul Pierce is, you don't know his game, you wouldn't think this is true, but to an extent, this is true, right? When people think about LeBron's rivals, right, they'll probably say the Warriors with Steph Curry, Klay Thompson, and Kevin Durant and Draymond, right? That was a team that he was rivals with. Or they'll talk about if it's a one-on-one, if it's a one-on-one thing, you just gotta let some people talk. Look at him here and continue to do whatever you're doing. Yeah. But we got to educate some of these folks, man. And, some people will look at Lance Stevenson is very popular for going at it with LeBron, right? And he in more recent memory, Dylan Brooks is someone that's gone at LeBron. Well, before all of those guys, there was Paul Pierce. And granted, Paul Pierce wasn't playing games the way fucking Dylan Brooks and the way Lance Stevenson do, but he talks a lot of shit. If you don't know Paul Pierce, if you've never seen him, it takes less than a 30-second clip for you to realize the type of person that Paul Pierce is. He talks a lot of shit. It won't take you very long to realize why he probably got stabbed up when he was younger. I'm so sorry. Yo, when he just be talking shit, you're like, nah, bro, this guy cannot be serious, bro. I can see why. And if you don't know, like I said, go pull up some Paul Pierce clips, go do some research, just read about Paul Pierce if you've never heard of him or if you don't know who he is. And he was a problem for LeBron. I think it was a matchup problem. The way Paul Pierce plays, awkward, slow, but very physical. He likes to bully ball. Yeah, Paul Pierce was a bucket in the NBA. A lot of folks don't know he was a bucket in the NBA. And a much better one-on-one defender than he was ever given credit for. And especially in that time. And I'll talk about this in a little bit. LeBron was not a 40% shooter from three at that time. But let's just call it what it is, right? If for the most part LeBron was gonna go right. He was gonna go right. And so Paul Pierce, being the vet that he is, being a physical player, not relying on his athleticism, trying to beat Bron to spots, he did a good job on him. And then on the other end, he was able to score on him. So it was a really frustrating matchup for LeBron. And you got to go through other greats to become great. That's just the reality of it. What do you mean? What did Draymond say? What did he say? You know, it's funny, and I guess I'll go right into it because this is more sit your ass down. We don't love you like that or something. Well, yeah, I mean that's absolutely facts, right? And I think this is the next part that I get into, the unsung heroes of the NBA. Draymond Green was absolutely right, right? We don't love you like that in terms of comparison to Kobe Bryant, right? Like we get that. That was very obvious. Doesn't take away from how good Paul Pierce was in the NBA, right? And when it comes to becoming a great in this league, I was talking about it yesterday when it comes to, we were talking about trauma in life pushing guys to be great. There's also NBA trauma, meaning there's teams, there's players, situations, things happen that the great players that we've seen have to overcome in order to become the person that we know them to be. Like Michael Jordan had to go through the Detroit Pistons, right? That whole thing. LeBron had to go through the Boston Celtics. Kobe even had to go through the Boston Celtics. Like there are these times, these losses. Jayson Tatum had a heartbreaking loss to the Warriors, and then the Miami Heat. There are these games, players, teams that create these monsters that we've seen. And oftentimes they'll never get the credit, right? They'll never get the credit that they deserve for sort of opening the door for these great players, whether someone got injured, like Tom Brady, for example, talks all the time about, I think, Drew Bledsoe getting injured and giving him that opportunity, right? LeBron James, like this Paul Pierce situation, right? Had to overcome Paul Pierce, and we've seen it time and again. But these guys are never gonna get their credit that pushes these guys over the top. Michael Jordan had Clyde Drexler. All of these little things, right? And I think we do have to give some of these guys credit, and it's great that we have podcasts nowadays because a lot of NBA guys talk, right? And obviously they're not going to consistently get the stars, so we get to hear these stories from quote unquote role players or lesser stars in the league, and I think it's great because now we get to hear these stories. What's on the Knuckleheads podcast? They always talk about who's the first player to bust your ass. And 90% of the time, that player is not a star player. And that's sort of where this comes from, right? And I think some of that, obviously it's on the fans, but some people got short-term memory. Some people got short-term memory, and some people were also just born yesterday. So, the other topic that I wanted to cover today is this: can you be a great without a championship? And I was thinking about this topic because of the Jason Tatum and Asia Wilson interview that was on the Old Man and the Three. It was a really good interview with those two. And when asked the question, both of them had a slightly different response. Asia Wilson, obviously a two-time champion, two-time MVP award winner, was all about rings. You can't be great without a ring. I'm not giving Paul any credit for that. If it's nobody scared of Bron, we better than Bron. We know everybody him. Now we made him. The Celtics were good but weird. Oh, that's for sure. To your point, Elijah, that is for sure. But I think that's a them thing, right? It doesn't take away from the fact that it was an obstacle that LeBron had to overcome. And it was just dumb, right? It was just dumb. Like I said, I think Paul was a counter to LeBron, right? And the problem with Paul Pierce is he'll never give LeBron that credit, right? Like, he'll say that but never be like, yo, he did a phenomenal job of overcoming us. Because the reality is, I said it earlier, you have to go through great players to become great, right? I think it's just a part of the it's a part of the process. And obviously it wasn't just Paul Pierce, right? I'm not going to pretend like Paul Pierce was single-handedly stopping LeBron James. They were a great defensive team. So, I'm not going to give Paul Pierce all of that credit. But, compared to a player like a Dylan Brooks or a player like a Lance Stevenson, the defense and the pest that Paul Pierce was on the other end of the court, he was going to go down and get a bucket. And I think that was what made that tough for LeBron beyond all of like the outside shit. But again, can you be great without a championship? I think the answer is yeah. I think you can be. Because I'm trying to think of an example. Like, for example, like Gary Payton, right? Gary Payton gets a ring at the end of his career, right? Where we can all agree, even though I think he played a part in that championship, he wasn't a player that was just sitting his ass on the bench the whole game. He played a part. He had some big shots, but not the production that he had like he was earlier on in his career. But there's people that act like, yeah, Russell Westbrook, like, it's so weird because all of a sudden that gold trophy validates an entire career when their career was their career already. Like, their numbers were their numbers, their accolades and accomplishments were their, but now they join a team when they're older and they're not as good anymore, and all of a sudden it says, oh, you're a champion, you are a great player. They were a great player that whole time. like this notion that you can only be great if you have a championship. And I guess if you are a champion, right? Let me play the other side. Let me do devil's advocate. If you are a champion and if you go by numbers and you go by accolades and whatnot, I guess to an extent, it does water down these conversations and these lists. Because I think I was saying this the other day, right? Everyone can't go. Everyone can't be a winner. We can't hand out participation trophies. Everything needs context. A championship can make a player great. Absolutely. Right? But there's scenarios, like one championship doesn't all of a sudden make someone great or not. I think when you start having a player that's getting multiple championships in their prime, that's when you start bordering becoming a legend. Right? Where you start transcending your era. But I do think some players still should be mentioned in that conversation. Like I believe Luka Doncic is gonna get a finals, a championship in the NBA, and I think he's on my mind because I was getting a bunch of comments on his video still earlier. Like, I believe Luka Doncic is gonna get a championship at some point in his career. If he continues on this path and never gets a ring, does that all of a sudden mean he's not one of the best basketball players ever? Are we fucking bugging? Like, are we good? That don't do nothing for me. Like, that don't change nothing. I'm still going to think he's a great player because he's shown it, right? Longevity, consistency, the numbers, all of these things. To your point, Elijah, context is important. But there are some folks that only want to talk championships. And that's when I start to have a little bit of an issue. Because I understand that it's very difficult and only one team gets a ring at the end of the year. But let's not pretend like y'all didn't have to go through great teams and great players to get there. You're only as good as your competition, right? And so if everybody that don't got a ring sucks, then that means you fucking suck too. If you got the ring over these guys that suck, like, you only as good as your competition. But everybody wants to do this ring talk, right? Like, who are they talking about the other day? Chris Paul, for example, they were talking about because he's not ring chasing at the age of 39. Because there's always that two part, right? You can never win. Exactly. When you look at the space, there was a Celtics dynasty, Lakers, Spurs, Bron, Warriors, Bulls, etc. Plus other good teams that can make a good shot at the title. There's not as much opportunity as people think. Yeah. I mean, for the most part, every decade, there's only like 3 teams that win a majority of those championships. In every decade, if you look through the history of the NBA, because good teams figure it out, and those great players, they find the formula that works. But I hate the people that act like you all of a sudden can't give someone credit because they've never won a ring. I think that's silly. We all have eyes and can watch basketball. We can appreciate parts of the game that don't necessarily have to be that ring. Like, that whole narrative to me is just so weird. It's just so weird to me. Now, this was actually from a couple weeks ago, I think. But Jeff Teague was on his podcast, Club 520 podcast, talking about how he didn't like Kobe Bryant's play style very much. He didn't love watching it. And, you know, when you go online, there's a lot of people that are, I don't think outraged is the word, right? But there's a lot of people that are very confused by it. And again, it's another one of those moments where I have to remind myself, a lot of folks just started watching basketball probably within the last 10 years. Like, I have to remind myself these things, right? A lot of people don't even know that Kobe Bryant was getting a lot of hate earlier on in his career. A lot of hate for the way that he played the game of basketball. This isn't a Jeff Teague thing. There was analysts, this was a common theme, right? That joke of, oh, he's a ball hog, wasn't so much a joke back then. It was a critique. It's turned into a joke, but it really was a critique of his game, of the way that he played, his style. But a lot of people forget that. And this is going to go into what I'm going to talk about in a second. A part of what Jeff Teague said that he didn't like about Kobe's style of play was it looked like he was just working so hard that it was taking a lot of effort. My question to you, though, maybe a prompt for another day, is who isn't a great from today? I think players can be good in their era without being great. I think great is just thrown loosely. That, hey, is the word great being thrown loosely? And who is or isn't great? So you're basically asking who might not necessarily translate in any other era. And I actually think you could say a lot of players. Right? I personally think you could say a good amount of players wouldn't be great. Just off the top of my head, a Paul George. Really, really good player. I wouldn't consider him a great in that sense where he transcends eras and he's in times he's been one of the best players in the league, but it hasn't been consistent enough for me to say I could throw you in that all-time category. I do agree with that, and some motherfucker out there gonna be like, you nitpicking, but I do think, yeah, there should be a difference. I agree 100%. Trying to think of a player right now who else would be good but not great. Like a Julius Randle, like a good player in this era, hasn't really accomplished much. Like he could put up good numbers physically. I think obviously Julius Randle translates. And it sucks to say because he's on the Knicks, but in terms of being an all-time great, I wouldn't put him in there. Honestly, a lot of bigs now. Even like I love DeMar, so it hurts to say, but yeah, like his mid-range game, that aspect of his game, I think is all-time. But himself as a player. Yeah, even I'm just trying to think of even players on like the Olympic team, like a Bam Adebayo, for example. Yeah, like, and then when you think of, and here's the other side of that, right? There's good players, role players that I think could be great in any era. For example, Drew Holiday. I think Drew Holiday would be phenomenal no matter what fucking time it is, no matter what year, no matter what time of the day, no matter who got what jersey on. I think someone like a Drew Holiday translates in any era of basketball. I'm not saying he's a great. I'm not saying he's one of the best. I think someone like him can. And that's why, to your point, Elijah, a lot of this has to come with context. Where was I? That's a good convo. That's a great convo, man. That's a great convo. I love that. And I guess it's not to disrespect players, but it's to really give certain players flowers, right? I will argue Harden. Kobe broke it down perfectly. He was doing what he had to, so that's special, and we can nod to that. But it's not winning basketball. They see how he handled situations. I don't know. Okay, I'll say this. I will say this about James Harden, though, right? I say he's a great because he was the tool that they used to really blow open this modern day basketball. He was. I know people want to say the Phoenix Suns, and obviously they were a part of it. Even if you want to go back, run TMC and those Warriors. I could even argue Magic Johnson running point guard. But I can say that James Harden really has influenced the hell out of this next generation with the step back, the way that they're dribbling, the Euros. I gotta give some of that credit. It's not all James Harden, but I gotta give him some of that credit. And let's be honest, right? If Luka Doncic becomes, what we think Luka's gonna be, I'm not saying he watched James Harden or idolized James Harden, but his play is very similar to James Harden. And some of those bumps that Harden had to go through with the referees and all that shit and everyone hating him, I think softened the blow for a Luka Doncic and his style of play. Him and the Warrior Dame and Kai really helped change it to through a 3 era we're in. Yeah. So, Dame. See, even Damian Lillard, borderline, because I think Dame is all time. His talent, his skill, his game. You don't get 70 points and you're not all time. But someone like him, his accolades, I think people will definitely use that against him. But just the eye test when it comes to Damian Lillard, I think Damian Lillard is all time. And then that's a good comparison. Like a Kyrie Irving is a career like 22, 21 point per game scorer. He's never had these outrageous numbers. But when you see him, you see an all-time player. He's a great. So yeah, everything is with context. And also, apart from that, to go back to this Jeff Teague, Kobe Bryant thing, I think a lot of fans don't realize how much preference impacts the way that we view a lot of these things, right? I was aware of this very early on, that there were just styles of play, certain things that people do that I just preferred. I just like it. I want to watch it. I want to watch guys shoot a bunch of mid-range shots, turnarounds, fadeaways. That's the style that I like. Right? So when I start choosing, oh, this is the person that I prefer, these are the people that I like, and then I'm trying to visualize, like, that's where a lot of these things come from. Now, I'm also able to put some of this to the side when I'm gauging someone and just judging basketball for what it is, right? And I think a lot of people aren't able to do that, right? A lot of people aren't able to decompartmentalize. They're not able to pull things apart and separate things for what they are, right? And like I said, a lot of people don't realize that people didn't like Kobe for a lot of his career. And a lot of people hated that style. And time goes on. Some people forget. All we have are highlights, and people start seeing things differently. But yeah, man. Yeah. Now, I think that kind of brings me to if Draymond shot as well as he defended, Jesus. Listen, man, there was a stretch early on in that Warriors run where I genuinely thought Draymond was gonna become a shooter. And he shot great this past season. And I went and looked at stats. I thought it was because he didn't get up that many shots. He actually got up a pretty good amount of shots and shot 39% from three. So that's a good thing. And I think it really just a confidence thing for him. But yeah, he would be different. Here we go. We're going to tackle this. The problem with the GOAT conversation. Right? And it goes to the point that I was just making. A lot of it is preference. And a lot of people got to concede that part because we want to pretend as if we can't be biased or we don't have preferences on things. And the reality is we do. Right? We can try to put those things aside, but the reality is we do. And that is a huge part of the problem with these GOAT conversations, and people start fucking arguing and then they start shitting on the other. Like, that's why it becomes this toxic thing, and a lot of times isn't a basketball hoop conversation. The other part of it is this. When we're comparing players, I think a lot of people think that it's fucking 2K. I think a lot of people think that when you take like the all-time LeBron or the all-time Jordan or the all-time Kobe, that all-time player encompasses all of the great things that they did at different parts of their career. When the reality is, when you look at players, they were great at different things at different times of their career. You have early Mike, super fucking athletic, no jump shot, no three-pointer, all right from the midi, attack mode, not passing the ball. You have the first championship Mike, who kind of started putting all of that stuff together, still got athleticism. But then you have the latter Mike, the second three-peat. It's just a different Michael Jordan, not as athletic, more methodical. When we argue, we can't say, oh, well, Michael Jordan was athletic and he could shoot it. That's just not. Some people argue like it's just, that's not reality. Or, oh, LeBron James, he could jump high as hell and he could shoot 40% from three. Whoa, 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 whoa. Those two LeBron James are 20 years apart, dog. like what the fuck are we talking about? Like Miami, there was a stretch on the Miami Heat where LeBron James and Dwayne Wade, and I keep saying this, they literally committed to not shooting 3-pointers. That's how bad they were shooting threes. Still won a championship. Like, there's different eras. Like, there's Miami Bron. There's Cleveland Bron. Now there's LA Bron. There's first time Cleveland Bron. You know what I'm saying? Number 8 Kobe. Number 24 Kobe. They're all great at different things. So I never hear anyone, talking about that, right? And I get that in the GOAT conversation, you're encompassing everything. But some folks act like these players were all of these things at the same time, and that's just not true. But like I said, preference has a huge part to do with it. Now, I want to know what some of y'all favorite players are, some of y'all Mount Rushmores for yourselves. I'm going to give you some of mine. Obviously, when you are born has a huge part to do with this, right? For me, the first basketball player that I knew their name, and my first memory of basketball was my dad had built, like, he had gotten some wood. He built like a little backboard, put a little metal rim on it, and put it on the door in the home that we used to have when I was a kid. And I would hang on that motherfucker. I would dunk and hang on it. And the first player that I ever remembered was Michael Jordan. The first player, right? So I understand what Michael Jordan has meant to me. I got a bunch of Jordans in the back and shit. And so I understand when someone says, oh, you can never go over Michael Jordan. That was the first player to me. But I also didn't get to see him consistently in real time. Right? I was a baby. So my first favorite player where I was watching them every day was Tracy McGrady. That was my guy. Tracy McGrady, Orlando, Houston. I used to get up early when they would have preseason games in China. That's how big of a T-Mac fan I was. So Tracy McGrady, like I said, preference, style of play, it all makes sense, right? It all makes sense. And then him and the rivalry between Kobe, I guess because of the media sense, and obviously I was young, I chose my side. It was T-Mac. I chose my side. I was T-Mac. I was a T-Mac guy. And, over time, I really, after, watching all of these Kobe things, he just looks like an asshole, realizing what he's all about, I really became a big Kobe fan as well. And, in the middle of all that, huge Melo guy. So those really are my four. If we're really, is Mike, Kobe, T-Mac, and Melo are my four. And then my favorite big ever, just the style of it, is Akeem. Is just the way that he played. I love Akeem's style, and I also love Shaq. Those are like my two bigs. And then I've always personally favorite players, not based on levels. Beasley was cold, bro. Beasley was cold. Blake Griffin, D Rose, Andre Drummond, KD, Delano Banton. Oh shit. You pulling out some names, dog. In terms of, I'm trying to think of some role guys that I really liked as well. Let's see. I'm trying to think. I was big Jamal Crawford. I like Jamal Crawford a lot, and I felt like even on Denver, I felt like J.R. Smith used to never get credit for being just like a good athletic guy that could score. But fuck, who did I? Yo. Jared Jeffries on the New York Knicks, and even on the Washington Wizards, bro, that man was guarding everybody. That man was guarding everybody, dog. Everyone he was guarding. That shit was crazy. Yeah. So those are some of the stars that I really like to watch. And with the power forwards, in terms of power forwards, like I've always been, I think Tim Duncan is great. I still think that Tim is the best power forward ever, right? I do think that him and Kevin Garnett is a lot closer than people make it out to be. Again, to go back to this championship thing where we're not going to act like Kevin Garnett was not a cold motherfucker. Like, we're not going to act like he wasn't more athletic than Timmy. Like, yeah. Kevin Garnett was nice, bro. Kevin Garnett was nice. So that brings me to my top 3 players ever, right? And obviously, this is not a favoritism thing. How would y'all rank your top 3? Right? I want to hear this, because I've figured out a way to define my top 3. Right? I have to me what is a clear definition of it at this point. And let me get some water. Now, I'll start by saying this. I think most of the top 10, just so to go beyond the top 3 really quickly, in my mind, most of the top 10 players in NBA history are they're superheroes. You know, they're superhuman, meaning they're either super athletic, they're super athletes, or they're centers, and they're the thing super about them is their height. They're just so much bigger and taller than everyone else, right? Especially if you compare them to their position. And so just hold that thought right there, right? For me, number 1 and 2 are not just the best players when it comes to the skills and the statistics and all of that shit. They are super athletes. They are 2 of the greatest athletes that we've ever seen in basketball. And I think that that's important, because if you take 2 people that have pretty much the same skill, but one can jump higher, run faster, who the fuck do you think I'm going to choose? Like, duh. Hey, what the fuck? So, my number 1 is Michael Jordan. Obviously. I don't think that's a surprise. My number 1 player of all time is Michael Jordan. And for me, it's because he's the athlete with the greatest athleticism, but also matches that with unbelievable skill. He mixes both of them, right? I think the art of basketball has to be taken into account in this, right? He's able to express the art of basketball at one of the highest, if not the highest levels, right? I think that's a part of it. And then you take into account what he does best. He's one of the, if not the greatest one-on-one player ever in NBA history. What is the most important thing in basketball? To put the ball in the hoop, to go get a bucket, to score. And I get the 40,000. I'll get to that in a second. I don't want to I'm not trying to discredit LeBron. He's phenomenal. He's just not a one-on-one scorer type of. We know this. Carmelo Anthony, a good friend of LeBron James. Go watch. He did an interview with Jason Tatum. They were talking about ones in Team USA. Melo flat out said LeBron's not doing that. No disrespect to Bron, but one of the greatest, if not the greatest guy at putting the ball in the hoop, 1-on-1, from the perimeter, outside, inside, from almost anywhere. And then on defense, he's one of the best 1-on-1 defenders ever also. And you have to be able to defend the ball. That's not nearly as important as, watching the ball, right? It's important, but you got to stop the ball in front of you. And all of those things, to me, make Michael Jordan the best player ever. And then you add on top of that all of his scoring titles, defensive player of the year, where I don't give a fuck what they think about all the stats. You can't fake the shit that he did. The championship, you can't fake that. So my number one is Michael Jordan. Number two is also one of the, if not the greatest athlete in NBA history. And that's LeBron James. 6'8", 6'9", 260, 270. I mean, you can't compete with that. With the speed that he has, the touch that he has around the rim, and he's always had a passing ability that I think you could argue he's the best point guard ever. I think if you want to, you could argue it, and honestly, I don't think you'd have a difficult time. I think his greatest assets, the things that he does the best, are more of the secondary things in this sport. Passing the ball is what he does phenomenal. It's special the way he passes the ball. His vision, his anticipation, his knowledge, it's special. And then on defense, he's, I think, one of the greatest off-ball defenders we've seen. His ability to chase down blocks, come off the weak side. Bron was a problem. But compared to being a one-on-one scorer and a one-on-one defender, that to me is what kind of knocks that down a little bit. And me understanding that this doesn't take away from him, but the points accumulated comes from, and consistency is, I'm very high on consistency. It's unbelievable how consistent he's been able to stay. Being healthy, that's phenomenal. But the time, the amount of games, it adds to these things, right? But I wouldn't be mad if someone argued him for first. I think him and Jordan are kind of splitting hairs, if I'm being honest. And to go back to my preference, I think a part of it might have to do with the preference thing. Let's be honest, right? Because even if LeBron James gets 6 championships, I might argue Jordan still. Let's just keep it a bean. Let's keep it a bean. Kobe Bean Bryant. Let's keep it a bean. And so I'm just being honest in that respect. But there's people that think calling LeBron's the second greatest basketball player is disrespectful, and I just don't understand that. But anyway, number 3. To me, the third greatest basketball player ever is Kobe Bean Bryant. And some of the reasons why people love him so much, in my mind, are some of the reasons why he gets knocked down to third. I think out of the top 10 list, he is probably the most normal when it comes to physical attributes. At 6'5", 6'6", he's average in height at his position. Good height, but he's average. Not exceptionally fast. He has like a 36-inch vert compared to Bron and Mike, who have 40-plus inch verts. Not physically imposing. He's not stronger than everyone. He's not lifting a truck. But what he was able to do with his human body, he was able to keep upgrading himself to the point where he flirted with the top of the mountain, right? He's there. He plays with with demigods, being a regular human. Right? All these guys got like their powers and shit. And here motherfucking it's like when Batman, right? On Justice League. Everybody got their powers, Superman flying and shit. You know, Green Lantern got his ring, and here come Batman with his fucking utility belt. He's like, I got this, fam. I got you. You know, that's why Batman's my favorite hero. But to me, like I said, when you're comparing just the game, right? Him and Jordan are so similar, but Jordan can jump higher, is faster, more athletic than him. So who do you think I'm going to choose? And some people don't understand this part as well. The reason why Kobe has so many moves was because of necessity. He don't have the first step that Michael Jordan had. We see, I don't know if you guys, we were watching USA Basketball the other day. Anthony Edwards don't need a dribble package. His first step is the dribble package. So a part of Kobe's this bag that we speak of, he needed it because it was a necessity. He needed to have 8, 9, 10 counters. So every time you stop him, he got something else to go to. And a part of that came with the tough shots and blah, 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 blah. But I think that is kind of what knocks him to third for me, because imagine he had 40-plus inch vert, the type of player that he could have been. He always talks about his hands are small compared to Mike. And still to get to do what he was able to do. But I think when you start lining them up against one another, you start saying, fuck, man, like, he's not 6'9" like Bron. He's not fast and jump as high as Mike. And to me, that's how I break this down. It goes Jordan, Bron, Kobe. And Kobe is the greatest basketball player with the least physical attributes, or the least amount of physical assets. I don't know how to word this properly right now, but that's how I look at it. And I don't know. What do y'all think, man? What do y'all think? That's, and like I said, I'm not even really getting into championships and fucking MVP awards and all that shit. Like, and that's how you know, like, the accolades are only a part of it, because Kobe Bryant with one MVP award is a top 3 player. Widely considered a top 3 player. But then when it comes to all of these other guys, you want to fucking split hairs talking about MVPs when we can see how good they are. Like, come on now. Come on. All right, so what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to save this. I'm going to save the rest of this because I want to talk about some defense, but I want to do it on an episode where we talk about offense and defense. While as we continue to try to dispel some of these narratives that they've spent years building. But yeah, man, I had fun doing this little freestyle episode. Bron and Mike interchangeable. Either makes sense, but I agree. I have facts, man. I think that's, and I think, I'll be honest, I'll give myself some props. I think that's my personal growth as a LeBron hater. I'm not shy about it. But I can't even be mad at you if you think Bron is the greatest player ever. Like, it just is. Like I said, I'm aware that it's all preference is a huge part of it. When you were born, all of these things factor in. But that's why I love these conversations, man. You could literally go on for forever. Like I said, I didn't even talk about accolades, stats, number. Like, we didn't even really get into all that stuff. But next week we'll probably talk about defense. There's some shit about defense that I hate that people talk about, and try to dispel some of that. But hey, man, while you're here, please like, comment, subscribe, all that good shit. It helps the channel. And I really, really appreciate it. And as always, thank you for joining me, man. Thank you as always for joining me. Elijah, I appreciate you, dog. You're amazing, man. You're always coming and hanging out. And you could have been anywhere in the internet, but y'all were here with me. And I really, really fucking appreciate that. I say that every time, but like, y'all don't know how much that really means to me, because you could literally be anywhere on the internet. And like I said, I really appreciate it. So I'll see y'all next week, man. I hope y'all have a great weekend. What's 2 lives? What you mean? What you mean 2 lives? I got 1 life, bro. I don't know about 2 lives. Paul Pierce might have 9, or there's a couple people in this world that might have multiple lives. But is there a game or some shit going on today? Is there Team USA? Isn't that on Monday? Isn't that game on Monday? Yeah, man. See you next week. I'll see y'all, man. Peace, peace, peace. Thank you. Wait, I actually want to see. Is there a game? Oh, no. No, you good, brother, man. You good. I'll see you next week, bro. You have a great weekend, man. Peace, peace, peace.